Okay, we are looking at page 2 of the Unit 5B Study Guide. Now we're going to go beyond factoring and look at solve by square rooting. This is some people's favorite thing to do because I found this to be the easiest. So as long as you have a squared term on this side, we need to get rid of the squared by square rooting 24. Because when you square root this side, the square root will cancel out. So when you square root a squared, they cancel out. And the square root of 24 comes out to about 4.9 is what we'll round it to. So we want to make sure it's positive and negative 4.9. So we set up two equations. You have x minus 2 equals 4.9. That's positive. X minus 2 equals negative 4.9. When you add 2 to the other side, you get x by itself. And one answer is x equals about 6.9. Now on this one, we get x equals about negative 2.9. So to solve by square rooting means you're going to square root this number. You get two equations because you have a positive and negative problem, and then you solve them both. Okay? So I would pause the video, try this one on your own. It says solve by square rooting. Identify the zeros just means these 2 points are what we call the zeros on the x-axis. Round to the nearest tenth if we get a decimal. So, square root of 55 is about positive and negative 7.4. So n plus 4 equals 7.4. n plus 4 equals negative 7.4. Again, you have equals the positive version equals the negative version, and then you solve both problems. So pluses to minus. So 3.4 is one answer. Another one, subtract, you get negative 11.4. Okay, that is solved by square rooting. Next one is the quadratic formula. As long as it's set equal to 0, we want to identify our a, b, and c. So a equals 1, b equals negative 8, c equals 16. So let's put these numbers. Remember, this little negative sign means opposite. So we want to start off by taking the opposite of the b term. The opposite of negative 8 is positive 8. Which will plus and minus the square root, b squared, so negative 8 squared, minus 4 times a times c. So minus 4 times 1 times 16, all over 2a. So 2 times 1. Remember, we're going to do this big part under the square root symbol first, so we're going to type all that in using our calculator. So I'm literally going to use the same thing here. We're going to put parentheses around the negative 8 squared minus 4 parentheses 1 parentheses 16. We're finding what's called the discriminant, which you don't really need that right now, but if you type all that in, we get 0. So we're going to be doing 8 plus and minus the square root of 0 divided by 2. Well, let's take the square root of 0 is 0. So you can write this out two different ways. You can write 8 plus 0 divided by 2 and 8 minus 0 divided by 2. Well, if you add 0 or subtract 0, you're still going to get 8 divided by 2 is 4. So this is a unique one. When they come out to the same answer, you don't have to really do it twice, because the square root of 0 tells me there's going to be one answer. But I just wanted to show you how to set up your two problems, because we will, on the next one, have to set up two questions. So solve by using the quadratic formula. Let's identify our a is 1, b is negative 5, C is negative 7. Again, you want to make sure it's set equal to 0 before you get your A, B, and C. Formula says you take the opposite of B. So opposite of negative 5 is positive 5. The B squared, so in parentheses, don't forget those parentheses, B squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2A. Just 2 times 1. So again, I'm going to type all that stuff in my calculator that's under here. That up so you can see a little better. Parentheses, negative 5 squared, this is my squared button over on the left there, minus 4 times 1 times negative 7 equals 53. We're going to do 5 plus and minus the square root of 53 divided by 2. Well, we have to use our calculator to figure out what is the square root of 53. So you hit your second button, and then down here where the square root is, that's your square root button. So the square root of 53 is about 7.28. Anytime the number behind this is 5 or higher, we're going to round this number up. So we're going to round this to 7.3 because that's above a 5. So it rounds that up to 7.3. So our two problems are going to be x equals 5 plus 7.3 divided by 2, and x equals 5 minus 7.3 divided by 2. So I'm going to put a little note here. The square root of 53 was positive and negative 7.3. And you can see they already put the little positive and negative sign there, so that you know to do a plus one and a subtracting one, adding and subtracting. So that's 12.3 divided by 2. Remember to add before you divide here on the top part. You want to do the top before you divide by the bottom number. So you get about 6.15. This one will be subtracting 5 minus 7.3 is negative 2.3 divided by 2 equals negative 1.15. So practicing the quadratic formula, just like on here the quadratic formula is in a box, the quadratic formula will be given to you in that box on the test as well. So you'll have that formula to use. We were seeing you need to show your work, show that you plugged in the number, show that you set up the two equations to get your answers, or at least simplified and got your two answers. The next one is called difference of squares, and if you watch the first video, on this example on number 5 on the homework, we had 25b squared minus 16. I said we could x method this, but we could also call this difference of squares. So a difference of squares is square rooting, and one is going to be a plus sign and one is going to be a minus sign. So let's look at this question on this side. Number 13, write as a difference of squares. It doesn't matter whether they put y equals, 0 equals, f of x equals. The idea is we're going to take this part of the problem and write it as two parentheses. So you can either think of it as what multiplies to negative 4 and adds up to 0 and use the x method, or so we could say positive 2 and negative 2. So we're looking for x plus 2 and x minus 2. So you can use the x method, or you can know that the square root of x squared is just x and x. The square root of 4 is going to be 2 and negative 2. So either square rooting or using the x method, we're coming up with what makes this a difference of squares. So you're looking for two parentheses. Next one, again, square root of x squared would just be x and x. The square root of 100 is going to be positive 10 and negative 10. So that is all we're looking for in that section. Again, you can use x method, or writing a difference of squares is the same as square rooting those to get each of those answers.